It is 11 o'clock Mountain Time by my clock. That means it's 1 o'clock Eastern, and I'm going to go ahead and kick this thing off. Got a few people rolling in here, it looks like. I debated whether I wanted to do this solo or bring in a co-host from the get-go, but as this was kind of the kickoff episode, I thought I'd run through things myself. I was trying to think of, what podcasts do I listen to that, are really solo hosts, and Bill Burr was the only one that I could come up with. Um, maybe you're familiar with Bill Burr. He's a comedian. He's got a podcast I subscribe to. Hi, Jeff. Good to see you here. But he just kind of, talks along, tells some stories. So that's kind of what I'm going to do today as a solo. This is a kickoff to a series of LinkedIn Live events that I plan to do. And I will be bringing in some co-hosts and some guests to talk through really the concept of partnering with AI. And when I say partnering with AI, I'm really targeting and talking to partnership professionals, people who are managing partner programs, managing partnerships, managing ecosystems, and who are looking to leverage tools to help them do that more effectively. And I've spent over 15 years creating partner programs, managing partnerships. I've done everything from managing partner teams to, being the sole practitioner and 0 to 1 architect of partner programs. And so the past 2 years, I've been running my own consulting agency, helping my clients figure out how to establish their partner strategy and execute and improve their partner programs. And in that time, I've really, the timing's been interesting with AI. Things have really moved quickly over the past couple of years. And I've really been able to dive into those tools and do a ton of experimentation and, figure things out. I'm glued to all of the updates on the latest models when they come out, and how many parameters they have, and what the latest capabilities are. And it's interesting, as I have over the past couple of months really started to engage with more partner people and partnership leaders. I just kind of assume that's the case for everybody, but at the end of the day, not everybody has that bandwidth to experiment and try the latest tools and compare different things and figure out what works better for them. Really explore, everything from new LLM models all the way down to some point tools, that can help you do things more effectively, more efficiently. And that's what I want to dive into. And there's a few things that I'm doing around that. But this is going to be the first one, a LinkedIn Live series where we will just spend a few minutes every week thinking about effective ways of leveraging AI to help you partner better, to grow faster. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time here the last couple of years myself experimenting with AI tools and different models. And, my area of expertise is partnerships, 25 years on the vendor side in on ISV, working with, primarily other tech companies, agencies, SIs. And, again, 15 years of focus on that. And, I really think AI is a potential turning point for partnerships. There's a lot of buzz, at least in the partnering community, that, the time is right for partnerships, and that go-to-market motion is really enough to move the needle. And, particularly because, traditional go-to-market avenues are harder these days. Inbound is really hard, with AI focused search. There's less traffic coming directly to web properties. And so that inbound is drying up. Outbound is hard. There's so much noise. There's so many more tools that people are using to do outreach and cold emails and other forms of cold outreach. That's a really hard avenue right now. And so partnerships becomes a little bit more enticing. The realization that, you can't control as many touch points along the sales process and sales cycle as you would like to, but you can potentially influence by creating partnerships and effective champions that your prospects and your customers are potentially engaging with throughout the sales cycle and their life cycle with you as a solution. Partnerships is definitely a great opportunity right now. But I think, traditionally and historically, partner leaders and partner programs have been asked to do a lot with relatively few resources. I have a mailing list and I track partner technology companies, and my list is only about 100 companies long right now. There are, you know, relatively established PRM companies all the way through companies like Crossbeam, who have, really moved the needle in terms of partner technology, to very new entrants in the space, new takes on PRM and co-selling and other forms of partner engagement. But if you contrast that with marketing technology, where I think some of the latest reports I've seen in the landscapes have over 15,000 different solutions on the market serving marketing teams and marketing programs. I think the technology side of things of partnerships is very nascent and has a lot of opportunity. And I think the timing again is interesting. One of the biggest challenges for partner managers and partnership leaders is scale and just being able to address all of the things that need to be done. Even when I've had, really successful runs and built up really strong partner programs, over the course of 2, 3, 4 years, my jobs have always devolved to the point where my focus was day to day, just trying to keep my inbox empty. And that becomes a really hard place to get traction and move beyond the current status and do things more strategically. And so I think there's an opportunity to leverage some new tools that allow you to get some of that activity out of your inbox. If you can take a look at all of the things that are coming in and demanding your attention, whether it's potential new partners coming in and how do we assess those, or existing partners bringing in deals and you're facilitating engagement with your team and across the organizations, whether it is the regular cadence calls that you have to prepare for or QBRs that you're performing and getting ready for with your teams. There's a lot of activity. And if you can just take a look at those activities and come up with 3, 4, 5 different approaches to automating those things and really clearing out a lot of the busy work from your inbox, I think partnership people have a really good chance to elevate themselves and have a more strategic impact on their organizations. But you really need to free yourself and get away from some of the busy work and the things that bog you down in your day-to-day. And I think AI provides some framework to do that. I think again, the challenge is finding the time and finding the bandwidth, creating the bandwidth to make that work. How do you make time in that day to assess and decide how you might automate some workflows, and what are the right tools that you might leverage for that? How do I experiment and create that time? So that's a lot of things that I'm focusing on these days, trying to come up with some options, trying to come up with the ability and some solutions for partner program leaders and partnership managers to figure out, how to really leverage these new technologies, not to just get ahead, but, really meet the expectations that have been laid out for partners. And as I said, those expectations are always really high, and the ability to execute is always a bit constrained based on the resources that we're provided as partnership people. And so I really think this is an opportunity. I think it's a turning point, and there's a ton of technology out there that folks can start to take advantage of and move the needle. So I'm going to run through a handful of those and just kind of go from top down. What are some of the different types of tools that, as a partnering professional, you might think about leveraging in your day-to-day activity? Really building a toolkit, and there's a spectrum of different technologies that, can be leveraged and creating some of those workflows. I don't think we're on the cusp of having partner manager agents where we can simply give them, a computer program, targets and goals and a set of tools. And on the back end, they come up with all of that partner source revenue that everybody is looking for. There are some spaces in technology that lend themselves to that type of approach. I think customer success, customer support is well down that path. I think, managing and dealing with those types of requests are being handled by different agents, but that's just an extension of, the way things have been going for a while. Everybody's has had a chat bot on their websites and within their tools for quite some time. Now AI is allowing you to, put more knowledge and put more ability to, solve those problems into the process. I think, some of the other areas that people have been focusing on are AI SDRs. I don't know that that one's been proven out yet. I don't know that, fully replacing, someone on the beginning of the funnel of the sales process has been achieved through an agentic approach. There are things that, there are tasks that AI can help through that process. But I think we're a long ways away from, really just being able to turn over that entire process to AI agents. And I think partnering is the same way. There's too much nuance. There is too much human to human interaction that's still required. I don't think anybody's ready just to connect their agents together and see what happens in terms of a partnership. It's too important and, too meaningful, and the outcome, less well defined than it needs to be to take that type of agentic approach. But that said, there are a lot of great tools out there that are going to allow you to, take your ability to execute within your partnering program, within your partner strategy to the next level. I've been doing a ton of outreach and engagement across, partnership leaders and across the partnering ecosystem and community. And I think everybody's really starting at a similar spot here. Almost everybody has selected their favorite large language model. They've selected their favorite chatbot. They have been working on prompt engineering. They're figuring out how to, set context and set roles and figuring out how those tools work best for them. And that's a good starting point. I think that is a solid foundation and a good baseline. There's still a spectrum here, though. We've got some folks that are using free chatbots on the side. There are some that are paying out of their own pocket. There are some that do have a corporate provided tool set and capability. They might be a Microsoft shop where they have, OpenAI built into Copilot. They may be a Google shop where they've got Gemini built into that. They may have these standalone tools that they've signed up through with Teams or even on a standalone basis. And there's others beside this. There's a lot of people, that are like Grok from XAI. In Europe, Mistral is another one. But everybody's kind of starting at the LLM level. What people need to understand is a couple of things, that all of these LLMs can be interfaced not just in the chatbot and on the website and in the desktop applications, but they can also be accessed via API. That means a system to system or computer program to computer program interface. And understanding that is really the next step towards creating workflows and creating tools and models that will allow you to take what I consider to be a swivel chair approach, which is where people are chatting with a chat bot. They're maybe going through a few iterations of a prompt to create an email or create a document or help them workflow or think about strategy. But then they're taking that engagement, they're taking that content that the LLM is helping them create, and they're copying and pasting. They're going from one screen to the other screen, and they're pasting it into an email, they're pasting it into a document, they're pasting it into a CRM or a PRM or another application. The next step is to get beyond that swivel chair approach. And that's where the next set of tools, in my mind, really comes in. And that's workflow automation tools. Things like Zapier, things like Make, N8N is another one that's getting a lot of traction here recently. Personally, I've used Zapier for probably 7 or 8 years. They've been around for quite a while. They have a huge library of out-of-the-box integrations to a ton of enterprise level tools. And they've extended that to these LLMs, meaning you can create a workflow and have a call out to Gemini or a call out to Claude or OpenAI in order to take the context within that workflow, send it out to an LLM, get that information back from the LLM, and then process it further along, push it into other systems, use it as input into other steps in the process. Makes very similar. I don't have a ton of experience with that one, but in my mind, a very similar approach to Zapier. N8N's a little bit different. It's an open source project. You can run it and pay for it in the cloud. You can run it in your own environment, and it's a little more sophisticated from a development standpoint. You can do a few more things, but it brings along a little bit more complexity as well. But these are 3 models that I really like. They're all fairly much or fairly stuck in the what I would call deterministic workflows. And that is the workflow where and you can lay out end to end what the process is from point to point. If this, then that. And that's a very deterministic workflow. That's, compared to an agentic workflow. And, we get all the way down to a standalone agent where you give it an individual goal, you give it some tools, and you see what comes out the other end from an outcome. And there's a whole spectrum from deterministic clear through agentic. And there's some other tools that take us along that path, from one side to the other that we'll cover here as well. The next level of tools that I think most folks need to add to their portfolio or their toolkit are data management tools. I'm a big fan of Clay. I've been using that for quite some time. Think of it as a spreadsheet on steroids with the ability to create individual cells or individual columns within that spreadsheet that you can go out and call an LLM or make a prompt out to the LLM. This is a super powerful approach, meaning that's where your reusability really starts to come in. If I have, a single partner that I'm creating a profile for, that's one thing, and I can swivel chair that back and forth between a chatbot. If I have an entire list of 10, 50, 100, 1,000 different partners, and I want to run a very similar assessment against them, that's when you can take that tool like a Clay, like a Zapier table, or even an Airtable, and plug in an LLM prompt that gets reused across all of those rows of data. That's when the scalability comes in, and that's where these things start to get really powerful. So if you haven't taken a look at these, take a look. I think most of them you can get started on a free version. Most of them are based on usage or credits, and you get a fixed number on a monthly basis to use up and get started. I don't have as much experience with Airtable. I know you can do some similar things, but I've used Zapier tables in some very specific Zapier integrated flows, and Clay is kind of my go-to here in this category. So take a look and see if those make sense to you. The next level of tool that really comes in play and takes us a little further down that path from deterministic workflows into some more agentic capabilities. And this is a category of tools that I call no-code agent builders. They're still fairly scripted in terms of what you want them to accomplish, but a little less deterministic in that you don't define the step-by-step you want them to take. You give these agent builders access to a variety of tools. That might be through something like an MCP server. If you've heard of that, great. If you haven't heard that, we'll cover it in a future session. But you can integrate with other platforms and other tools. It might be your CRM platform. It might be another sales platform or a PRM platform or another document repository. You can hook it up directly to your Google Docs or your SharePoint, for example, to pull data or push data back into. But those are tools that you give these agents access to. You give them a prompt, you give them a goal, and then they decide as they go along, do I need to call some of these other tools? If I've given them a task and they don't have enough information to move forward, I might give them a tool like a Google search. Go out and do your own research. If they've done their own research and they still feel like they might not have the information to accomplish the goal, they might have the ability to send me a Slack message or an email asking for clarification or more input. So these types of tools are really interesting, and I advise everybody to kind of take a look at these. I've been using Lindy quite a bit recently. I've done quite a bit with Relevance as well. Agent AI is a tool from HubSpot. That one is about as easy as it gets to go in and start to prototype and create some really simple tools and workflows. So take a look at those and start to experiment a little bit. The next level down is really some of these partner tech solutions, companies like Euler, Intro, both new entrants into the PRM space. Zenfi's been around a little bit longer, but these tool platforms, these partner tech platforms, are starting to build in AI into their use cases and their tools and their workflows. It might be something like a partner support tool where you've got a lot of your background and your information exposed to your partner in terms of your product or your solution. They can come in and quickly ask for support and get immediate response. That's the type of request that oftentimes has devolved into an email backlog process. Partner emails me for some support. I have to reach out internally to get someone else, either a sales engineer or a sales rep. That fills up their inbox, and there's a delay for them to get back to me. Maybe they have to go to the product team, and that just creates this waterfall of delay. If you can create some of those AI-driven support agents within your partner ecosystem, that's a really powerful approach. There's co-selling tools, right? Being able to bring in and automate some engagement and some process flow with your co-selling partners through that process. So really interesting things going on in the partner technology space. So stay tuned for some more updates there. So just wanted to give an overview of kind of that toolkit that I think is really important for partnership professionals to start to think about putting together. How can you take it to the next level, right? How can you go from really taking a swivel chair approach with your chatbot, with your LLM, and take it to the next level? Well, take a look at some of those tools I shared, start to experiment a little bit of those. But if you want to take it even further, then connect with me directly anytime. Send me a note, reach out. I'm happy to share deeper information on these tools and approaches and workflows and other things. So feel free to reach out and connect with me directly. I've also set up a new community. I've got an online community called Partnering with AI, and we're creating an ecosystem where folks can come in and engage with each other and interact with their peers, talk about what's working, what's not, get some support. This is going to be part of it moving forward. We're going to do this on a weekly basis. I'm going to start with a LinkedIn Live episode. We're going to roll that over into community and internal roundtable approach where we'll dive deeper. We're going to have guests from the partnering community, some of the partner tech vendors, some other folks who are looking at AI and leveraging AI and creating some success stories within their programs and within their platforms. So pull out your phone, give it a scan. I'll drop in a link here in the event as well as a follow-up. Check out the community. Might be a good fit for you if you want to take it farther and really engage in your partnering with a focus on AI workflows and tools. And if you want to keep learning more, tune in next week. I'm going to shift this time a little bit. I think I'm going to do this a little earlier in the day on Wednesdays. But stay tuned. I will send out some information around that. Next week, I want to take a deeper dive into a framework that I've developed that will help you think about conceptualizing a workflow. It's great to kind of get your hands on and play with the tools, but I think really where you want to ultimately start is, what are you trying to accomplish? What are the outcomes you want? And what are the right tools ultimately to apply to that? So stay tuned for that. Got a couple of questions in here in the chat. Hi, Keith. Yeah, appreciate that. Let me pull up, let's see if I can share a screen here. I'll pull up this community. So we've got a few things going on in here. If I can get these screens set up right. Yeah, we've got that pulled up now. So this is community we've set. There's a couple different things. I'm doing some training sessions and some workshops as well. And we have some cohort-based communities in here. I've got kind of a regular feed on some content and some thought leadership things, some tools that I'm reviewing and doing some deep dives. I'm trying to do some of these video reviews and engagements, and really building out this community for folks to come in and engage with each other and have a space to think about how they can optimize and use AI. So Keith, take a look at that. I'll drop in a link here in the notes and the chat. Appreciate everybody who joined in today, and appreciate everybody if you weren't able to join in real time, took a look at the video. Hopefully you're getting something out of this, and would love to see you next week, and would love to see you come in and engage in our community. Until next time, cheers.